Hi there, guys. So I started this video over. I wanted to start it without wasting so much time. I told you guys, I think the last video that I made, that I was looking into possibly starting a couple of other channels. Um, this is going to be the first of uh, the new channel that I start. Um, it is going to be on more so on spiritual matters, the Bible, inspirational books that I read, things that I learn, things like that. Um, because that's a very big part of me and my life and everything too. And once we do this, once we get the perspective or whatever, then I would love to discuss these things with you guys. You can put a question down there. You can put it in the form of however what you got out of it. I mean, just however you want to do it. But that's really what I want to do. Did my hair over, you guys, off topic, but I did my hair over, did it again. And, I think I'm getting good with it. I really do. Um, but, so I'm going to give a little bit of a background and then I'm going to read, hopefully it won't be any copyright, anything, with me reading this. I'm going to give credit and everything to the author, let you all know who wrote it and everything. But uh, Lilith is what I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to read from the Lost Book of Lilith. Now, to go just a tad bit into the Lost Books, I have read a number of Lost Books. These are books that are from biblical characters that were not added into the Bible per se. And so they took all these different characters and so forth and put basically their story or more in-depth story of their lives into one big book called the Lost Books, which I had a few years ago, but have had since lost it. Um, it is something that I'm definitely going to get back. I think I actually got it back. I just got it online. Um, but anyway, Lilith was rumored to be, or said to be, the first wife of Adam before Eve. Um, I mean, we all know about Adam and Eve. I didn't have to go into that, but Lilith, in so many ways, I mean, just in so many ways, she has been demonized. She actually, they say, turned into a demon. Who eats babies, kills babies, and seduces men. But at the end of the day, I had been interested in Lilith, and I wanted to talk about her because I know and read about her and find out more about her story. Because I know that in the Bible and in most places in society, when a woman is demonized or something like that, it has something to do with men doing it. And the important thing to do is not to just take their word for it, but it is to actually look into the situation and find out exactly why, like what happened and everything. And reading it from the perspective in the Bible, there's also another woman who I'm probably going to highlight uh, on the new channel that I make. I've made it yet. I'm just doing a video right now. But that's going to be Jezebel. I'm going to talk some about Jezebel. But right now, this is not about Jezebel. But, I don't see Jezebel really as the horrible, wicked, whatever that they have made her to be either. Like I say, we can read it, discuss it, whatever, and you could let me know your perspective or however you feel on it. But I'm going to get into it because I don't want the video to be too horribly long. So this is the Lost Book of Lilith. This is by Rachel S. Haverlock. Um, and I'm just gonna go right into it. Um, it says, perhaps it is a seedy story I tell, one that will shock you. Often the people with the loftiest thoughts have formed them in shadows. Descendants, however, like to think of their ancestors as clean, so some things are left out of history. Should I dispel the myth? Come out from my guises and admit that creation is not as easy as you would believe. Are you prepared to entertain more than the idea of one man and one woman? This story is written from the, let's say, the first person, as if Lilith were telling her story. So, I'm going to see if I can kind of get this to where I can get it to where I can be comfortable and don't have to hold it. My life began in a garden, not a tended one with flowers in neat rows, but a dynamic wilderness where earth was still struggling to pull itself together away from water. The plants were various, but alike in their newness. We came into being in the same instant, made from the same fire and air. These things are very important, so pay attention to those little things. When we first turned to regard each other, his feet were planted in the soil and mine in water. We stood close, but still the boundary between the elements was clear. We stayed so long gazing at one another that our eyes did what language later would. He was spectacular to behold. The expansive, flat chest, sharp green eyes, dark skin. Looking at him contained elements of looking at a reflection. But I knew that he was different from me. My first moment of being was entwined with his first moment of being. Finally he said, I am Adam. Lilith, I said. I said, and stepped out of the water toward him. Adam jumped back. I am Lilith, I said, standing still and staring at him. Lilith, I see, he said, circling around my body and inspecting me. I turned quickly, placed my hands on his shoulders, and walked him backward to the water. When his feet touched the water, they slipped out from under him, and soon he was floating. He looked about himself quizzically and showed all the signs of being uncomfortable. I dove down and began to push myself through the water. Where are we going? Adam called out to me. Out there, I yelled back to him. Lilith, come back. I returned, although I wasn't finished, and went with the Earthman back to his land. On the dry part of the island, we continued our explorations. We lay in the pale green of meadows, ate soft, fleshly fruits with seeds stuck in our teeth, and followed the four rivers in the hope of finding their end. When it seemed that the rivers did not cease, the day unfolded into night. When darkness fell, I felt more at ease in the garden. Great possibility lurked between the shadows of the taller trees. I got up to run into the night and greet what waited for me. But Adam took my hand. Wait for the lights, he said, his voice causing the night to darken. He advised patience with such authority that I assumed he saw things which I did not see. When the tiny lights emerged from the darkness, I beheld motion that seemed beyond my form. So many small lights came out of the blanket of darkness that when the great orb appeared, Adam and I turned to each other and held in one another's warmth with our arms. A rich, wet smell of earth rose up to us. I have a story to tell you, Adam said, stroking the hair out of my face. On the fourth day of creation, before we came into being, the Creator made two great orbs. The bright, brilliant one is called the sun, and it is male like me. The other orb is called the moon. She is a woman who changes her mind all the time. In the beginning, the sun and moon were equal and stayed in the sky together all the time. But the moon was jealous of the sun's radiance and began to speak badly of him. When the Creator heard her words, he hurled her down from her original height. The moon could no longer generate her own light, only reflect that of the sun. She fell into night, over which she still reigns. When she fell, tiny threads of light were loosened from her body. These are the stars. I looked at the sky and found that Adam's story was true. The almost circular moon illuminated the night and breathed life into it. She dispersed the blanket of darkness into a play of light and shadow. Hidden aspects of the garden were conjured as she smiled on us with celestial coolness. The stars shone with her example. She was their source. Adam and I slept side by side with his arm draped over me. I felt where his breath began and how it traveled through me. My breath reached out of me, and likewise entered him. We lay together a cycle of breath until the night orb was replaced by the day one. I remember that day, and the next day was the golden time. I am not sure of time. I'm not sure if time was different then, longer and more fluid, or if my memory it has elongated what transpired. When the day orb rose, I opened my eyes quickly into his. Our bodies were warm and unified, still whole after the darkness. At the moment, there was nothing beyond the embrace. The garden was inside of us. The beauty and connection was surrounded that's which surrounded us made us up. When we stood, we were embraced by the garden and held together by its morning mist. As we walked, an invisible force bound us. Exploring the terrain of the garden was a process of self-discovery. The pools interspersed throughout the garden itself, I'm sorry, throughout the garden suggested that water was inside of me. The trees create a shade which pointed to a shadow within. Tasting the fruits was tasting Adam, and the earth under his feet was the stuff of our bodies. The hum of insects and animals was the rhythm of our thoughts. My sense of being one component of a complex system filled me with security. When I close my eyes, I can easily recall the garden, but the feeling of being inside of it is one that I suspect will not return. The problems began the next day, when Adam began the task of naming things. That morning, he did not lie still, gazing at me. He told me that the Creator had commanded him to bring order to the garden through names. That morning, he did through names. I laughed and told Adam that to name things would separate them and pose division. I questioned his creator's intentions. Before, I hadn't been sure, but I now knew that Adam and I came from two separate forces working together. We were different beings with divergent forms and purposes. The creatrix had never said anything to me about names. I found the idea absurd. Adam stared at me, proposing challenge. You are woman. The sense that our words could have different intentions excited me. I felt a new sensation pulse through my body. I stepped back. I'm Lilith. Do you know me? His green eyes lit up. I call you woman. We were using words to talk about words, but I knew that what we were really saying, had nothing to do with them. The sounds meeting in air were a prelude to our bodies meeting in ways that they had not, and as of yet, met. Your words will not change a thing, I said defiantly, and raised one side of my mouth into a smile. Adam's gaze turned from seductive to serious. I have a job to do. There is a system to create. I looked around me at the low hanging trees and high reaching grasses. A system was at work all around us, inside of us. Adam, you are trying to grasp things which cannot be held. He looked at me with fury. You do not understand. You are woman. Adam walked away and went about his task of naming. It was so apparently foolish to me that I expected him to soon understand the futility of his labor. I went on to one of the pools to bathe. As I swam, I searched the waters for what the Creatrix intended for me. I moved through the water as the water moved me on its currents. This surrender and exchange was what the garden expected from me. When I finished swimming, I laid on the shore of the water, staring up. My body absorbed the sun and winds of the garden. I thought of how Adam and I could be like the sun and the wind, wrapping themselves together to become air. I wanted to feel again the way I had when Adam challenged me. In the deepest hot of the day, Adam approached. When he stood over me, I knew the shadow was his. I was sure that he was all done naming and was ready to swim and lie beside me. Woman, there you are lying down the way you are supposed to, he said. I opened my eyes and saw the rich tones of his skin gleaming in the sun. The curves of his body appeared rounded and smooth, the embodiment of Eden. I am laying, I answered him. You lie down, and I will lie on top of you, he said with authority. I was not quick to forget how excited the mutual challenge of the morning had made me. No, I said, you lie down, and I will lie on top of you. I looked up at him and lifted my eyebrows. Adam was angry. You lie under me, and I on top. This is the way the system works. From what I had heard about the system, it was ridiculous. Why did the garden need names? And why did who got to be on top and who on the bottom have to be a rule? Why don't we work together to make the system work? I suggested. Adam was clearly not playing. I named you, he said, as a slate gray color flashed in his green eyes. I gave you identity, and for this, you must lie down. Throughout his conversation, Adam failed to notice that I was already lying down. If he had just gotten on top of me without having to insist that he was doing it, everything would have been fine. I must not do anything, I said, and rose to my feet. The gray in his eyes sharpened. This is how it's meant to be. I pitied Adam. In his assertion of domination, he seemed small and fragmented. He was losing sight of what the garden was. I lowered my voice to a firm whisper. No lying is going to take place. Adam's face changed. He stared into me as if he had been made only to be conquered. His arms tensed and no longer appeared to me as the wings that kept me warm at night. They seemed so final. Then the rivers which surrounded the garden, a sense of despair washed over me, and I realized that this beautiful man, this earth man and his body, could be nothing but my prison. Lie down, he said. How can you say that to me? That is the way it is. You lie down for me. I want to be on top, I said defiantly. You were created to be on the bottom, he answered. The burning started in my stomach and moved through my heart up to my throat. My legs shook with the desire for motion to be gone suddenly and forever. But I knew that my legs could not carry me as rapidly or as far as I wanted to go. That was what he thought of me, the bottom, not a temporary or sometimes bottom, but a form intended to be forever beneath him. We could never look at each other as we had on the first day. The garden lost all its beauty. It became a landscape of confinement as I became aware not of the pools and trees, but of the wall which surrounded me. My salvation lay in escape. The need to leave was so complete and absolute that I pulled the words from the abyss within. Adam had begun a war of language. If he could use words to place me beneath him, then I could use them to disappear. I howled, then the secret words of God, the name which echoed through me and filled the garden with its power, the name of God, her name, the name. Let me go. When I brought my head down from the screen, I had sprouted wings, two sheer black wings which shimmered in the sun. My body looked altogether different. I turned to Adam, said goodbye, lifted my wings into the air, and felt my feet lift off the ground. The higher I got, the smaller Adam became. Who was on the bottom now? There was more than the garden of rivers and fruit as I saw once I crossed over the wall of paradise. Weightless, I moved through realms of possibility and felt individuated. I was not just one piece of an elaborate world. I was a separate force within the world. I was alone. When I saw the desert beneath me, all doubt was dispelled. The stark, empty hills and valleys were open enough to receive me in my freedom. In this new landscape, I could be exposed. I could roam without the boundaries of Eden. The desert opened itself to me with promise. When I saw the blue water which bordered the desert, I knew where I would dwell. The shore of the blue sea, the edge where desert and water meet, was a dynamic place for my transformation. I landed there, my feet in sand for the first time, and walked upon the beach. The beach stretched forever with hot sands of promise and constant relief of water. Date palms offered shade and sweet refreshment. During the day, I was filled with the satisfaction of solitude, of having no earthman or demands, of being alone and able to turn whenever the spirit moved me. I watched the sun set across the water and dispel behind a distant stretch of land. As the sun sank, I imagined a mirror Lilith there on the other side of the water. She too was free and content with her aloneness. She too had sprouted wings and found her beach. She was all the company I needed. When the sky grew dark, I continued my walk. For the first time, I could be immersed in shadow with no atom to hold me back. As the darkness became complete, I noticed that when the soles of my feet touched the sand, sparks of light were ignited. My footsteps glowed, and each step brought me forward from Adam's rigid definitions. Each step was nearer to the cave. The night was made of darkness, but something deeper emanated from the cave. I noticed a shadow so dark that it was almost purple, looking out like a single eye from a hillside. I climbed up to it and felt an unbelievable coolness stream out and surrounded me like water. I went in, my perfect domain, and enclosed with one gate and penetrating darkness. How good it felt to sink into the cave, how much like a return. I awoke to the distant feeling that I was not alone and saw three figures standing above me. From the heat they emanated, I knew that they were not beings like the earthman. They were made of other stuff. The small one, small, dark, and intense, stepped forward. Lilith, where do you think you are? In my cave. How do you know me? We are messengers of God. I drew up my legs and sat up. He continued, we are Sanve, he said, bowing his head, then pointed. Sansave and Singmala. Sansave leaned in toward me. He was very beautiful with rich brown skin and long dark hair. He smelled like sage. Lilith, you must return to the garden which was created for you. I arched forward to see and smell him more clearly. Sweet angel, I cannot return. Adam's paradise requires my submission. Sansave did not answer me. Instead, Singmala emerged from the back of the cave, the darkest part, tall and gracefully thin. There was something mystical promised in the blue of his eyes. I knew that he was not as beautiful as Samsave, yet I was more drawn to him. He was difficult to behold because of the fierce energy which surrounded him. Sangmala smiled, aligned, and life faster than wind. He spread his long arms out in front of me and spoke in a tone whose intention was unclear. If you do not go back to the garden, you will become a demoness out here on your own. Something about the way he said it charged me the way Adam's initial challenge had. Fine, I answered matter of factly. I'll become a demoness, and you can stay with me. Like that, the day passed, and again it was night. Sansave and Sanve and Sansave vaporized, and it was just me and that being made of fire. Where Adam had held me in his arms, Sangala really touched me. His head hung above me, above mine, and our tongues twisted around each other in the manner of snakes. An angel's hands moved over me from neck to shoulders, to the breast, to stomach, and into my abyss. He brought sounds no less wondrous than the name of the creatrix from inside me. My legs wrapped around his, and he entered me. Adam had been so wrong. Some things were nameless. Sangmala and I turned into pure light and shot up to the heavens. While we moved around and through each other, he spoke to me in a strange tongue. Though I could not understand, I was moved. My body felt as if it had been created a second time. And when I lay beside him, I confessed, I do not know. How could you have my she devil? He asked while putting his palm on my forehead. When it was morning, Sanve and Sansave were standing over me again, and Sangmalaf had retreated into the darkness of the cave. Sanve shook his head at me. You had a decision. Now the child that grows inside of you will be a demon, but that will not be enough. Your appetite can never be quenched, and you will still wander looking for men to father your demon children. which you will unleash into the world and not be satisfied. It has it can never be him again. And so you will search, and they will come to you, men of this world and of darkness. Your race will live on earth alongside Adam's, but they will never belong to you. I stayed in the cave and went out during the days to swim in the sea. In the evening, my cave was quiet. The still of the sea at sunset blew through to introduce night. At this time, the melancholy began. The sense of solitude moved from my head to the captivity of my chest and rang. The place where desert meets water was my freedom, yet my freedom came loneliness. It's not what I expected. It's not that I expected him to return. Even when it was happening, when I was filled with such pleasure, I knew it to be immoral. We would burn together and then he would be gone. It's not that I wanted to live with him as I had with Adam. Sangmaloth and I were made of different elements. The togetherness was a fluke of timing and boldness and was not to be reproduced, except in a child which grew inside of me and was born in the cave, half demon angel and half demoness. After I gave birth, I lay back to rest with my baby beside me. In the back of the cave, I felt Sangmaloth's presence observing his child. I knew he was there, and he knew that I knew he was there. So nothing needed to be said. I was pleased that we were all together, even with Sangmaloth hiding like that. But then the thing that angers me occurred, the event which makes me curse all the angels even today. Sangbe appeared and spoke in the language in a strange tongue which Sangmaloth had uttered the night we spent together. When Sangmaloth had spoken it, the language was soft and seductive, but Sangbe's words were sharp and harsh. I did not know the words, but I knew that Sangbe was scolding Sangmaloth. His voice woke up my child, who started to cry. I turned over to hold my baby, but before my arms could wrap around him, Sangve snatched him up. "O woman unnatural, you made the decision. Unlike daughters of the earth, you will not keep your children." And then all of them were gone, the child, the thief, and the angel. There is a sound of loneliness, a sound like that when the waves lap up on the shores and the sun slips away. It was not unhappy. I was not unhappy in the next period on the banks of the sea, but in states of solitude, the mind conceives of strange ideas. I don't know when the idea to return to the garden formed in my head. I only know that once it was there, I thought of the voyage every day. Why not see where Earthman's naming had gotten him? Why not behold the lushness of the land and eat of its remarkable fruits? I knew at this point that I had the ability to go anywhere, unattached. I was a being lighter than air. Off I went, retracing my route of escape. When I reached the wall which surrounds paradise, I stopped, rested on the top of the fence, and looked in. I understood her presence the moment I saw the impression on Earthman's face. He had a certain look of contentment, which is the direct result of having an intimate companion. So Earthman had found his bottom. She walked behind him, but did not follow. As she stared or turned alternatively, at the trees and the sky. An air of innocence surrounded her. Her complacency and voluptuousness could easily be mistaken for beauty. Earthman passed without looking up or sensing my eyes on him. She looked up at me, and when she saw me, I made a sign to keep quiet. The woman nodded and kept on her way. I did not look to see how they passed the night. I remained on the wall. I'm going to stop there, guys, and I'm going to make a part two. Um, as I say, just because I don't want the video to be too long. Hoping that you're enjoying this. I'll give a recap of the whole thing probably at the end of the next video. So I'm going to cut this video off and I'm going to start part two. Thank you for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe. Please hit the notifications so that you'll be aware when I upload a new video. And until the next video, see you next time.